The Bat Mayo Experience.
Bat Mayo Experience. Bat Mayo Experience. Bat Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings, an update on the top 150 overall rankings, which were released on Tuesday morning. During that show, I asked Jake Ciely whether or not Dalvin Cook had officially signed yet, and the answer was no when we recorded that. Of course, by the time it was released, he had signed with the New York Jets. So we got to do a bit of update on that, a bit of updates with Ezekiel Elliott, Rhamondre Stevenson, or if we have to update at all. So if you want the updated rankings, you can find all of those down in the description right now. The Week 1 DraftKings Listeners League, rake-free, by the way, is up right now, $75,000 of guaranteed rake-free money, so go reserve your spots. And if you want to build your own projections, runthesims.com. Just put in your email. You can screw around with it however you like. Kyle Yates from the Pro Football Network is on the line with me to help break this all down. Were you surprised that Zeke ended up going to New England for that much money?
I was. I think that it was a situation where we had kind of been monitoring Zeke and we had heard a couple other possible destinations. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he tweets 15, right? That was the whole thing. Like he tweeted 15 and it was like, okay, he's going to sign. He's going to sign. He's going to sign. Then it was New England. You're like, oh, wow, I did not have that on the bingo card. But here we are, Ezekiel Elliott, a member of the New England Patriots for 2023.
So fantasy-wise, I've been trying to let it gestate with me for a few days, at least, of what I want to do with this. Obviously, I think the Dalvin Cook, Breece Hall impact is far more impactful than anything that we're going to see from Zeke. And I went over to the NFC and just searched from the last 2 days of high-stakes fantasy drafts. Like Zeke is still basically being undrafted, although Rhamondre has dropped down a little bit. He had been previously going as running back number 10. He is now being drafted as running back number 12. Not a big difference there. Breece Hall fell from 12 down to 16, but more on that in a second. With Zeke still going relatively unchanged in all of this. I say this to bring up runthesims.com for a second, and these are the projections that you can screw around with. You have the baseline up there right now. You can see Rhamondre still projects as running back number 10. Ezekiel Elliott projects as running back number 68. That's with 15% of the market share of rushes, which honestly, although that's the baseline that we've thrown up at Run the Sims, I could see Bill Belichick just using him for reasons unknown to keep Rhamondre fresh, that I think he actually eats into the overall production from Stevenson a little bit more than people are giving him credit for. Not that he has any value, but how do you see it?
Yeah, I completely agree with that assessment. I've actually got Ezekiel Elliott at RB42 in my half PPR rankings for 2023. So not necessarily, again, someone that you are going to be like super excited to draft this year, but enough work is coming his way that it's going to affect the ceiling of Rhamondre Stevenson, but also provide at least some bye-week fill-in opportunities for Ezekiel Elliott. The main concern is going to be, does Zeke completely take over the first and second down work, the short yardage work, and the goal line opportunity that then it limits the ceiling that Rhamondre Stevenson has? A couple months ago, I had been listing Rhamondre Stevenson as a potential bust candidate because it seemed like a signing of one of these veteran free agent running backs was inevitable. Like we saw last year, Rhamondre Stevenson completely take over the backfield in New England, but that was so completely against the long, super long track record of Bill Belichick utilizing multiple running backs. Damian Harris got injured last year. James White was supposed to play, but ended up dealing with that injury and ended up retiring, which paved the path for Rhamondre Stevenson to absolutely dominate the touches in this backfield and perform really well with them. Now, Rhamondre Stevenson took a little bit of a tumble down my rankings. He's at RB14, so it's not a dramatic drop-off, but definitely Ezekiel Elliott's presence limits the upside, limits the opportunity, limits the ceiling for Rhamondre Stevenson to be a top 5 running back in 2023.
So I initially had Stevenson when I released the rankings at number 9 at running back because there was no one else there who was going to take his work. And now we have that answer of who is going to take his work. And I agree with you. I'm not too concerned about first and second down. I think we're going to see him more in a featured role. It is the short yardage, aka the goal line situation, that I am far more concerned with. And maybe that's a non-factor, but it does seem like a lot of guaranteed money to pay Zeke to show up and do absolutely nothing. So if you need 1 yard, as we've seen the past few years, Ezekiel Elliott is likely the guy that you want to go to. So I had Stevenson above Josh Jacobs, above Breece Hall, Jonathan Taylor, Najee Harris, Cam Akers, Alvin Kamara, all those guys. How far? You said you have him at running back number 12. Is that right?
12 is his ADP. I've actually got him down to RB15. Excuse me. I said 14 earlier. He's actually at RB15 in the ranking. So right behind guys like Jahmyr Gibbs over in Detroit, and Travis Etienne. I think that they present a little bit more upside than Ramondre Stevenson this year.
So let me ask you on a basis of, because I had moved Alvin Kamara up pretty substantially in my rankings after seeing his involvement with the first team in the first preseason game. An overreaction, maybe? I mean, I like to overreact to things a lot of the time. I don't care about a 3-game suspension whatsoever. If there's any 3 weeks I can afford to fill in with my flex guy playing RB2, it's going to be the first 3 weeks. What I care about is the rest of the time. Hence, when we talk about Breece Hall, that was sort of my reasoning behind Breece Hall the entire time anyways, that I don't really care about the first month of the season. Would I like to win? Absolutely. Far more concerned about having the best players later on in the season. And I don't think that having Kamara on your bench for 3 weeks is really going to do you that much harm. But if we talk about overall upside, yes, Jamal Williams is there. No, Jamal Williams didn't seem like he was going to eat a huge role into what Kamara was up to. So if you put those two next to each other, and if you have Kamara way down in your rankings, that's fine. But just if we just do a 1v1 comparison, as I'm trying to think right now, who do you think has the most upside between those two guys from weeks 4 to the end of the season?
Yeah, between Kamara and Stevenson specifically? Yeah, I'm actually going to side Stevenson here pretty easily. I think with Kamara, I've actually got him further down the rankings, and I think it's a little bit of a different approach because of the general audience in that I'm catering to is like the people that just want to find my rankings, want to just tune in and just be like, who can I draft this year? And I think that that's something where with the first 3 weeks, those first 3 weeks are critical for those specific fantasy managers. Now, you and I have a little bit more patience. We understand that this is a long game. We're going to be super invested throughout the entire year. But those first 3 weeks for the casual fantasy manager is a little bit different because they're going to, those first 3 weeks, 4 weeks, however long, they're going to, if they start out 0-4 because they drafted Alvin Kamara as a top 15 running back or whatever the case may be, then they might not be super encouraged to stick around for the entire year and they'll tune out. So I got to find that balance. And I think Kamara is a little bit further down the rankings for me because of how crowded this backfield is now too, right? With Jamal Williams being there, and then Kendre Miller. Kendre Miller was super high up on my board, on my draft board going into the 2023 NFL draft. He's an incredibly talented running back that can easily take in and eat into the receiving down work, but then also potentially just completely take over this backfield. Like there's a lot going on here in New Orleans where I'm willing to let someone else take the shot on Alvin Kamara this year, especially at his current ADP. And I'll go with Ramondre Stevenson there.
Yeah, I mean, Ramondre's going still like 30 spots ahead of Kamara.
For sure.
Theoretically draft them both. I was just thinking about upside. Here's the thing. With Miller this year coming in, if this was going to be the case that he was going to play a substantial role in this offense, why wouldn't they just cut Kamara knowing with all the news that's around?
Right. It's definitely something to take into account. And I think with Jamal Williams, yes, he got the contract, but that contract is structured in a way where next year they can easily get out of it. I think that they were recognizing, okay, he's not going to score 17 rushing touchdowns again. That was a bit of a fluke compared to his previous production. So I think that Kendre Miller could certainly be the Jamal Williams replacement, that Mark Ingram type role that they've had for years past, alongside a receiving work that could be his role in 2024 and beyond, or he could easily take it over from Jamal Williams this year. So there's just a lot going on, a lot at play here with this backfield where I think there are other situations that you can look at that potentially are a little bit more clear and do present a little bit more upside.
So I will bump down Stevenson just marginally to just behind Jonathan Taylor in my rankings, which isn't a substantial move. He remains on the same tier, just towards the back end of the tier instead of the front end of the tier for me in that situation. With Zeke, what's best case scenario for him if you draft him? Like if you have him in the 40s, the guys that I have in the 40s, like low 40s, Jeff Wilson, Jaylen Warren, Dalvin Cook, Raheem Mostert, like those type of guys. If Stevenson was to go down, do you think that Zeke would be the featured back in New England, or would it just be a Pierre Strong, someone else they bring in, Ty Montgomery gets himself right, and it's just, who knows?
I think it's definitely more of the latter, specifically the last part where you said, who knows, right? Like with Bill Belichick and trying to predict what he's going to do at running back is just a game that you should not play. So I think with Ramondre Stevenson, if he were to go down, then Zeke would probably get a slight bump up in work. We know that he's a solid pass protector, just not at center. We know that he's a solid pass protector, so he could potentially take that third down work and take that role away from Ramondre Stevenson, while you see someone like Pierre Strong or Kevin Harris or whoever they bring in on the free agent market to be the first and second down guy. There's really not much upside. It's that balance of what's the upside with some of those other players in that range. Like you mentioned, Jeff Wilson. there's a ton of upside for Jeff Wilson this year. If he can emerge as the guy in Miami, yeah, there's a ton of upside. Jaylen Warren, if he can take over this backfield from Najee Harris, or if Najee Harris goes down with an injury, I think Jaylen Warren has top 15 running back upside. So it just depends on what you're looking for at that spot in your draft. Do you want a safe floor with your RB4, RB3 on your roster? Then draft Zeke, because you know that you know what you're going to get. But if you want some upside, then you're probably best going after some of those other options.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I'm not really concerned about floor whatsoever in terms of but like you said, we're talking to two separate audiences potentially here. I'm just swinging for the fences with every pick. I need that upside. I really don't care how strong my bench is. The one good thing I would say about Zeke, and not that I have really much to say about him, I have number 51 in my running back rankings, which makes him about undraftable. Like you can draft him or Jerome Ford, take your shot, kind of thing. But depending on the league that you play in, like I know I play in with some of my friends are very serious about this. I also have a league that's 20 years running from high school. Half the people pick up a magazine still and come to the draft and cross their names in and out of it. If Zeke has one good game, I could trade one of these guys, Zeke. So there's that part of it too. You have to know your league.
Yep, absolutely.
So let's talk the Dalvin Cook and Breece Hall situation. So Dalvin Cook signs. Obviously, this is a big thing concerning Breece Hall's injury. Are they going to ease him back into play? That seems like it's going to be the case, although he'll likely be active for week 1. Although if he was surprised inactive, that wouldn't be completely shocking if they really wanted to give him a ton of rest. I initially had Breece Hall at number 12 in my number 16 in my running back rankings, and that's not right at all. Let's see. Number 12 in the running back rankings, number 28 overall. Current ADP now has it pushed down to running back 16. Running back number 49 overall. I do think he is going to be the guy, but let's say we get to week 6 when Breece Hall is completely healthy. What do you think that split looks like between the two?
Yeah, I think you and I are going to have different opinions on this situation based on where you said you had Dalvin Cook in the rankings. I actually have Dalvin Cook above Breece Hall this year based on this signing. And I think that this move from New York signals that they are all in for 2023. And we kind of, like, it's Captain Obvious, right? Like, we knew that with them trading for Aaron Rodgers. This is a 2023 move, potentially 2024. Like, they are going all in for the Super Bowl this year. So them looking at Breece Hall coming off of his injury, I think that they were uncomfortable looking at Breece Hall saying, okay, we need you to handle 20 carries right out of the gate coming off of your injury. That's just very unrealistic coming off that ACL injury. So then you look at the backfield. Are you comfortable relying on Michael Carter, Bam Knight, or Israel Abanikanda? Like, are you comfortable relying on those guys as you chase a Super Bowl? The answer is no. So then you go to a guy who you know can still produce at a solid level, maybe not to the level that he has in years past, in Dalvin Cook. And they signed him to money that isn't really anything to sneeze at, right? This is actually a substantial 1-year deal for Dalvin Cook in New York. This signals that they are going to ride Dalvin Cook here in 2023. To me, this signals that they are going to ride Dalvin Cook here in 2023 and allow Breece Hall to recover at his own pace, because what is to incentivize them to not just absolutely run Dalvin Cook into the ground here as they're chasing the championship in 2023, allow Breece Hall to recover at his own pace and allow him to be ready for 2024 and beyond. That's the way that I'm reading this situation. So Breece Hall, RB25 in my rankings. Dalvin Cook, RB20. I think that there is going to be a heavy leaning on Dalvin Cook to start the year. Maybe at the end of the year, we see that percentage switch, and Dalvin Cook is now the 1B in this backfield. But I don't think it's going to be something like Breece Hall is dominating 65% of the carries, and then Dalvin Cook is at 25 or 35, right? Where I think they're going to be still heavily involved, and it's going to be a pretty even split.
So this is where I was leaning with this, because I had made the ranking before the Dalvin Cook signing. There's no one there. It seems like it's great news. So in terms of the projections over at runthesims.com right now, it's funny that you say you have Dalvin Cook. You have Breece Hall at number 25. He projects as running back number 25 with 33% of the market share of rushing carries, still a higher touchdown market share than Dalvin Cook for the moment. But I think a lot of it depends on how long they feel that Breece Hall actually needs, because I think when it becomes winning time for them, be that midseason. I mean, they have a pretty rough schedule to start the season if they get behind the 8 ball a little bit, and Dalvin Cook is the running back and he's not really providing as much as maybe they like. I think that they would go with who is the superior talent at this point in time. And I think that's still a healthy Breece Hall over an aged Dalvin Cook right now.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
it depends on how long you think this recovery takes from him and how long they feel pressed to the point where it's like, all right, we need to get our guy back out there.
yeah, and I think that we have a long track record to look back on for players coming off of an ACL injury that makes me feel like that's going to be a longer timeline recovery than shorter, right? Like Adrian Peterson and Jamal Charles are the only players, the running backs coming off of an ACL injury that we can point to and be like they produced at a high level right away after. And I mean, it's shocking that Javonte Williams is going to play in week 2 of the preseason after coming off of an ACL injury, right? Like that's just absolutely shocking. And I just don't think that we can hold Breece Hall to that same level of saying like he's going to contribute and produce the way that he did. Like he was unstoppable. He was one of the best running backs in the NFL from a talent standpoint. Like he's absolutely up there with the best of the best when he's fully healthy. That timeline, I think that this move of bringing in Dalvin Cook signals that they are going to let him recover at his own pace. They are not going to try to rush him back because they need him for 2024 and beyond or a deep playoff push, right?
Well, I'll bump Breece Hall down, but how far does he go down? And obviously, with that, in conjunction, I'll have to move up Dalvin Cook. Would you rather have Javonte Williams or Breece Hall this year?
Yeah, I think at this point, I'm going to lean Javonte Williams. Now, I will say that could change based on the way he looks here in week 2 of the preseason. It's great that we're going to be able to at least get to see him on the field because then we can kind of just get this sort of barometer of like, okay, what does he actually look like? How is he performing coming off that injury? I think there's more upside now with Javonte Williams because his competition is Samaje Perine. So if Javonte Williams is fully healthy, then I think he's got the edge over Breece Hall because he's dealing with Samaje Perine and not Dalvin Cook.
Kenneth Walker or Breece Hall?
There, I will still go Kenneth Walker, but we're hearing reports that he is probably going to be ready for week 1. He's not currently even practicing. So that has a little bit of an asterisk right now. I'll still go Kenneth Walker because he is, he's not coming off of an ACL injury. He's not fully healthy, but it's a groin injury. He's not coming off of an ACL injury. I'll give the slight edge there to Kenneth Walker, but it is close.
So this is the range that we're talking about where Breece Hall has fallen into now.
Yes, correct.
And with Dalvin Cook, how high is too high for him? Like I would still feel more comfortable drafting Breece Hall than Dalvin Cook. Because again, I am planning for the later part of the season rather than the early part of the season to bulk up my roster. And if I can start buying these guys at a discount, that is absolutely what I want to do. So with Dalvin Cook, like, would you rather have Dalvin Cook or James Cook?
I'll go Dalvin Cook there. James Cook, I don't think I'm a little bit lower than consensus on James Cook this year. I just don't know if he's fully equipped and ready to handle like a substantial workload in this Buffalo offense. He's got to still remain insanely efficient. So I'll go with Dalvin Cook there.
All right, I'm going to stick with James Cook because I am a bit more bullish on James Cook this year, and hopefully the efficiency can pay off for him, especially with Josh Allen needing to run less so you stop getting hurt, Josh Allen. That would be nice.
Right.
I don't know if he can be talked into that, but we'll see on that front. How about Isaiah Pacheco or Dalvin Cook?
I will still go Dalvin Cook there. This was interesting. We were just talking about this on the PFN Fantasy Football podcast earlier with our friend Kyle Soppe. He is very bullish on Isaiah Pacheco this year, and I am a little bit further down the rankings on Pacheco, so I will still go Dalvin Cook there.
All right, so I think that we've kind of found the medium point that these two are going to be very close in the rankings together right now, at least in mine, that they're going to be somewhere in the 20s, early 30s a piece, which will substantially break them down into, like a tier or two down from where Breece Hall was initially to begin with in the top 150. Like the ADP on them right now, Breece Hall being drafted as, this is where the running back 16 still currently over the past 2 days since this news, but then now that's pick number 49 overall, down from like 28 overall. Dalvin Cook being drafted as running back number 28, 78th overall in that time. So way up for him, but obviously he has a home now to deal with. So at the Pro Football Network, you just go to profootballnetwork.com to find all your guys' entire fantasy football draft coverage.
That is it. Yeah, we are rolling out a ton of stuff here over the next few weekends, getting you guys ready to dominate your fantasy football leagues this year. And of course, over on YouTube, youtube.com/@PFNFantasy, and then the PFN Fantasy Football Podcast. Make sure to check it out wherever you download your podcasts.
All right, that will do it for me, Pat Mayo, on the show. Follow me on Twitter @ThePME. Smash the like, sub to Mayo Media Network for all your fantasy football. I mean, as we get into it, mainly fantasy or not fantasy, NFL betting needs. We've got a lot of betting content coming out very, very shortly for you all. But I want to check in periodically with people from around the industry to make sure that we have the most relevant information coming to you. I should be back on Sunday with fantasy stuff on another update after we review week 2 of the preseason coming on Thursday. the Best Quarterback Show with Cust and Jeff. So lock yourself in for 2 hours of fun. With that, I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!